Hello, everyone. I am Shalay Jackson, and I wanted to welcome all of you to this macro social work career panel. So, before we dive into things, I wanted to take care of some housekeeping. First and foremost, this event is put together by the Macro Career Committee of the Special Commission to Advance Macro Social Work. And in terms of what you can expect tonight, we wanted to provide a wide range of different macro opportunities. So each panelist will speak about their roles and responsibilities for about 5 minutes. Then we're going to pivot and switch over to breakout rooms. So each panelist will host two breakout rooms. So you'll have an opportunity to jump in the breakout room, ask questions, and get to know the panelists in more depth. Recording. I have received several emails and messages regarding recording. So just so you know, yes, this is being recorded and it will be emailed to you in about 2 weeks. Lastly, although the chat is open, we will not be taking questions in the chat. So save any questions that you have for the panelists for the breakout rooms. However, we would love for you to share your name and location so that we have a general idea of where everyone is joining from tonight. So without further ado, I am going to toss it over to Haley.
Thank you so much for having me, Hashalay. Hello, everyone else, wonderful social workers. We're very proud people. Um, I'm Haley Morissette. I was previously a trauma therapist. I'm a DJ, but most recently, I've been a national community organizer. So very much implementing and putting into practice those big social justice issues that we're always thinking about, especially in our practice and what our code of ethics holds us to, right? Speaking up for people. So a few of the roles and responsibilities that I have as a national organizer is to strategize, mobilize, and build power within communities across the country. I've worked in Memphis, DC, over here in Pensacola, Florida, where I'm at right now, South Florida, Alabama, all over the place. But it is very important that I am working with people to strategize, mobilize, and build people power. A few of those roles include doing strategic planning, making the map for people to be able to get something done, spotting opportunities, using some of that training that I have to be able to be an empathetic listener, and really being able to take the information that people give us as if we were doing like a biopsychosocial assessment, right? Except for big communities. Coalition building is a big part of the work that I do. I always meet people whether they're on our side, community leaders, organizations, people that are in office, and building coalitions with them to get things done. Those include just really making sure it's about trust, empathy, and getting the long game done. Training and mentoring others is also a part of this role as a national organizer. Empowering other folks is a core part of being an organizer. I have spent a lot of time training and mentoring younger organizers and helping them develop skills and confidence to like lead and mobilize their communities. Coaching people is actually a part of the biggest part of what I do. I don't go into communities and tell people what to do. I work with them to see what it is that they need. And then I help fill those gaps, which is something that social workers do. We love connecting folks and filling in gaps. Advocacy and policy engagement. When we have a solid foundation, we have to amplify the message after when we're really organizing, right? So lobbying on a grassroots level is really important, whether it's social media campaigns or just being loud and proud at actual meetings. I go to Tallahassee quite often. Side note, I actually just got done running for office to try to be in state house. Didn't win, but it's okay because we're going to get the things we still need. And then the last part is crisis management. I am always having to deal with the crisis, even when it's between people that are on the same team. And, sometimes it's just really important for us to be able to navigate those things in communities because this is heart work more than anything. So being able to be the person to stay grounded and really navigate, whether it's a big issue like I worked on after someone was killed by police here in my city, down to just small just small gaps of people just not knowing how to communicate with each other to be able to work together. And so those are also the things that you and the skills you need to be really successful as a national organizer is be able to think strategically, be able to build relationships, be adaptable and really resilient because things change at the drop of a dime. Be able to be a leader and a mentor and be able to manage a crisis. And more importantly, to me, one of the other biggest things is that you are someone that shows up in your values, especially the values of social work, in order to do what needs to be done in this job. And so, to wrap it up, social work is about building social power. It's very challenging. It's really unpredictable. It can be really draining. So, self care is very much needed. But it's the kind of work that works waves. I really remember when I decided to go ahead and get my bachelor's in social work before going to get my master's, that I read an article that said MLK would have been a social worker. And I couldn't agree more. I truly believe that that is the work that is cut out for us. We need more social workers in politics. We need more social workers making policy, and we need more social workers to organize our communities. So that's it. That's what I do on the macro side. And I forgot to say, I'm actually social worker of the year for the whole state of Florida because of this work that I do. So I'm coming to you for real. So please come ask me questions. Let's get it together. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. So up next is Michelle.
Hi, Shalay. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. And Hallie, that's amazing. That work is super inspiring and also a big reason why I think we're all here and why we all chose to be amazing social workers. Hi, everybody. I'm calling in from Brooklyn, New York. My name is Michelle Rojas Blackett. And I am the director of the People Business Partner team at Spring Health, which is a EAP mental health technology company. So my role is interesting. I actually started as the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Spring Health about 2.5 years ago. And through just sheer opportunity, hard work, was offered the opportunity to step into this position. So I'm the head of HR for product, tech, and operations, which is over half of the company. But my role and move into where I am today, working at a tech company, for-profit corporate space, is I started off as a caseworker, case manager early on in child welfare. I then moved to working in nonprofits, social enterprise. And when the pandemic happened in 2020, it was, the time for me to kind of look in the mirror, also look at my bank account and realize that I had a lot of student loan debt that unfortunately working in government agencies was just not going to cut it for me personally. And I knew that there was more impact that I personally could generate by leveraging the resources of corporate spaces. And DEI was an amazing foray into that. That pivot allowed me to look behind me and say, hey, there's no way I'm the only one that feels this way about pivoting into the corporate space. And I also know for certain that we need way more social workers in these spaces. And so I'm here to tell you that your social work degree is incredibly, incredibly versatile. These soft skills that I've learned as a social worker and I've cultivated in my early career are 150 million% still the skills that I leverage and use today. And,
Tubbs straw
and
that
that
sing.
and that frankly have propelled my career more than any of the hard skills that I have. Knowing how to talk to people, knowing how to de-escalate people, knowing how to motivate and influence people can get you far in any career choice that you take. And so the most rewarding part of being a head of HR people leader, because HR is, we think about like people firing people, but like people work can be transformative. And moving to a corporate space doesn't mean you're selling your soul. You can actually do really great work at mission-driven companies and ultimately do your part to change corporate spaces for the better and then ultimately change the world as a result. So one rewarding aspect of my role is just seeing people thrive. I make it a point at my jobs to unblock barriers, remove obstacles, build equity, and build cultures where anyone from any background can thrive and grow and feel fulfilled, which in turn supports mission-driven companies. I've always said I could never work at an Amazon, Facebook, a bank, because they don't align with my personal values. And so I've made it a concerted effort to work at mission-driven companies. Spring Health, our mission is to eliminate every barrier to mental health. We're constantly hiring. We hire a ton of social workers, so it's a great way to get your foot in the door into the corporate space. But all that to say, we also created the Corporate Social Work Collective, where we constantly are hosting events, resources. It's just a great place to start if you're looking to make the pivot into the corporate space. I'm happy to talk about this with any of you. It's a huge passion of mine, and we absolutely need more of you in these spaces.
Excellent. Thanks so much. All right. I'm going to pass it over to Robin.
So those are both very hard acts to follow. I'm Robin McKalen, and I'm going to start the way I always start any conversation where I'm talking with people that to tell you what I did. That I have spent the last 30 years working with gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, intersex, queer, questioning, two spirits, same gender loving, pansexual, flexual, not straight, not labeling, straight-ish, straight so far, straight with options, straight but stuff happens, gender bending, bigender, pangender, agender, asexual, non-binary, and other sexual and gender minority youth. I love starting with the litany of the language because, and it worked today, it really works because it sets two frameworks for what have been really my life in social work. One is that we can't keep up, but we can keep open. Right. And that the one of the things that I've loved the most about doing the work that I do is that you never stop learning. You're always moving on and growing and changing and the journey just keeps going. So I've learned, you can't necessarily keep up, but we can keep open. And then the second thing I've learned is that I can't really necessarily understand other people's experiences. I don't necessarily know what it's like to walk through the world in their skin, but I can. When someone tells me who they are, I can accept and respect that. I can just believe them. And so both of those things have been part of the my growth and development as a social worker. I started in the corporate world, and then but not with a company that sort of matched my values. And my agency, I actually ended up founding an agency based on my fieldwork practice when I was getting my master's at the UConn School of Social Work. That the first year that I did my master's, my fieldwork, we did an analysis of the LGBTQ plus community because I was a community organizer. That was what my goal was. And so we did a needs analysis survey, and we found over 100 organizations that supported LGBTQ plus adults. Like no matter how you slice or dice a community, there was a group for that, right? So if you were interested in antique cars, there was a gay group for that. If you wanted to be naked in the woods, there was a gay group for that. If you want, gay Christians, gay Catholics, gay, all of the stuff. But there were only two groups for youth in the whole state. And so I proposed to the university that for my second year, I would do a conference on LGBTQ youth. And my own adolescence was really bad, right? And I didn't want, I felt like young people needed more support. And so this was in 1992. And so in 93, we started planning the first conference. And truthfully, the young people that helped organize it and I were so transformed by the experience that we just decided to continue going. So we started as an all volunteer organization. Around 1998, the state offered us a little bit of money, so we got incorporated and got our 501(c)(3. And then the agency sort of grew into doing a bunch of different things. So we did the annual conference, and our last in-person conference was in 2019, just before COVID, and there were 3,700 people there, youth and everybody that was responsible for their health and well-being. And so we did a conference. We created a mentoring program that focused on LGBTQ plus youth in out-of-home care. We started running youth support groups. We started training other organizations to say, listen, there's nobody's mission statement says, I only work with straight and cisgender people. Everybody's mission statement says, I work with humans. Right. And some of those humans are going to be LGBTQ plus. So trying to get organizations and agencies to meet the needs of this constituents. I ended up retiring finally after 26 years, 27 years. I retired in 2020. Found out I wasn't really good at retirement, and so I'm back. And we decided, even though the last conference was in 2019, we decided, especially right now with everything that's happening, it was really important to be able to create a space of community, connection, and joy for young people and those responsible for their health and well-being. So we're back in 2025. The SojiCon is what we're calling it now. It'll be back in March 21st and 22nd at the University of Connecticut in stores, and we're very excited for that. So the last piece I'll just say is the most rewarding aspect of this is, and somebody, I think Haley said this first, that the ability to connect people, the ability to see a gap and go like, oh, how about this? And bringing people together to make a difference. That and creating a space where young people feel welcomed, valued, and affirmed no matter who they are. And that has been the joy of my life, I would have to say. So I'm going to end there. Love to answer any questions. Somebody asked if they could get that laundry list of expressions. I'll try to send that to Chalet after. And honestly, yeah, that's my short list. So I'm going to stop now and turn it over to the next person.
All right. So Alexis, you were up next.
Great. Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Great. So I'm Dr. Alexis Ducalis. I'm Senior Policy Analyst at Florida Policy Institute, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank. We have staff remotely across the state, but I live in St. Petersburg and we're headquartered in Orlando. So my social work journey, like I think someone else said, also started in direct care and case management in the child welfare system here in Tampa Bay, but I quickly realized my skills would be better utilized elsewhere. So I started pivoting to macro social work back in 2015 through internships and getting involved with NASW and eventually getting what's now my dream job and my current job. So I started as an analyst in 2019. I became a senior analyst this year, but the basic responsibilities of the role are the same. Primarily, I am a researcher and a writer. I analyze Florida's budget and policies with an emphasis on issues impacting the state's immigrant population and worker issues. And I propose better solutions, ideally, better solutions. And a big part of my job is generating, fact sheets, blogs, issue briefs, and detailed reports that are both informative, but also easily digestible. And I also develop relationships with grassroots advocates, including community organizers like we've heard from already, and legislators, particularly state legislators, but sometimes federal as well, to lift up these policy solutions and try to come together and, make Florida a better place for everybody. But when I'm not researching and writing, I participate in statewide coalitions and state and national conferences, of course. I conduct media interviews regularly, and I also assist colleagues and smaller agencies that might not have researchers with research and messaging and keeping track of all the legislation that flies around here during the legislative session. Some of the skills necessary to be a good research analyst or policy analyst, I'd say absolutely you have to be able to think critically about policies with a justice-oriented lens, which for social workers should be pretty easy. Write and speak concisely and clearly, which I don't always do, but I try. And spot important details, so being super detail-oriented, just in the legislation you're looking at, in your own writing and the data you analyze. A lot of times you are going to have your face in spreadsheets because you're trying to analyze the budget, or you're going to be bogged down in legal jargon and need help from lawyers or people with more experience to understand what shall versus may means in a piece of legislation and what those implications are. Also, I mean, this is true of all social work and nonprofit work. You really need to be able to prioritize your workload and stay organized. Your work's going to look very different during the short legislative session than when you're outside of it. And that also means you need to set boundaries on your time and capacity, especially working remotely as I do and many of my colleagues do. And recognize sometimes you're going to have to pivot and meet some fast deadlines, especially, with media. They'll often call you and say, my deadline's in 2 hours. Can you talk? And then with session, you might get a bill that you're ready to testify on the next morning, and they amend it the night before. And then you have to analyze and redo everything all over again. So you just have to be ready for that. Of course, ask for help and emotional support because it definitely is going to get overwhelming, especially in a state like Florida. And you have to be willing to collaborate with others, but recognize that a lot of your work as a writer and a researcher is going to be independent. And you're typically not going to have someone micromanaging you all the time. So you need to be organized. And then the last two things are more of emotional considerations that recognize your own privilege and lack of privilege. Oftentimes we have both in the spaces in which you're stepping into, and make sure that you recognize there's a difference between your personal beliefs and your organization and partners' larger goals. Now, of course, you ideally work with an organization where your values are aligned, but sometimes there's things that you might believe or do in private that you can't publicly say as a representative for your organization. So those are important skills to learn, especially when you're lobbying and talking to legislators. And I'll just end by saying, yeah, the most rewarding aspect of being a policy analyst is well, full disclosure, I was ready to leave Florida for years before I met fellow advocates working in this space to make it a better place, because it is very challenging. But getting to work with my people and seeing impacted communities come out and testify and collaborating with advocates on issues that matter really changed my mind. And so even when, in Florida, getting good legislation is hard to do, getting good legislation passed is hard to do. But even killing, a terrible bill or making it less harmful is a win to us. And I'm grateful that this year the Special Commission on Macro Practice recognized this and named my organization a co-awardee for the Jack Rotham Structural Change Award based on our work pushing back on child labor rollbacks this past legislative session. And I'm a little bit over, so I will stop there.
Thanks so much, Alexis. Thanks for highlighting the importance of community within our work. All right, Patrice.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on a topic I absolutely love. My name is Patrice Hawkins, and I'm a proud social worker. And when I introduce myself in settings like this, I like to ask the audience to imagine this little word cloud next to my name, because I'm also an advocate, I'm an innovator. I've been an executive leader for a while, a board member, an analyst, and I came up through the ranks at Denver Human Services. So I'm always a government worker at heart, but I'm also a forever student. This past summer, I was honored to accept a new role as the Chief of Staff at Santa Monica Boys and Girls Club, where I'm the people person of the organization. And I know the title Chief of Staff can mean a lot of different things in different sectors, but what I've shared with my team is that my role is this blend of people work and process work coming together. So most of the operations at my organization, excluding finance, development, board management, are actually housed within my scope of work. So in my role, I get to set the tone for our service delivery and program operations while serving as a bridge between our mission, strategic plan, and what it means to put this work in practice for our teams. But I would say most importantly, I actually spend a lot of my time making sure we get the people stuff right. So it ranges. Getting people stuff right is the hiring, the performance goals, the training, coaching up folks, and really addressing behaviors that take place at all the clubs where we're impacting children's lives. So my day is usually filled up with offering support and guidance to staff. I might be assessing program impact or even addressing gaps in services where we need deeper training for staff or we need more financial investments and resources to elevate programs. But I would say of all the skills, this job requires a diversity of skills, such as being an innovator. I feel like I'm always thinking on my toes or trying to think about how do we deepen impact or elevate programming. But there might be times where I'm engaging in program evaluation or coaching our senior leadership team, and then hopping into a budget management meeting to talk about our personnel costs and how much it costs to provide a snack to every single kid every single day. Um, some of the other skills I think are being able to engage in strategic planning. And then there's always public speaking and community because that part where you're always an advocate. Earlier this week, I was at a community meeting in a public housing neighborhood and just taking in feedback and listening to folks. And so the final skill I find most important in this role is the ability to assess risk. And assessing risk is important because I focus a lot on the physical and the emotional safety of young people in this role. But to be successful, I think you have to be a present leader. You need to be flexible, be comfortable with navigating ambiguity. But I also find being grounded in your abilities and celebrating those things while also knowing where you still need to grow or have blind spots is really important. So for me, the most rewarding part about this role is that I get to show up as a social worker every single day, whether my team, the youth, or the community know it or not. So, for example, in my one-on-ones, I'm usually including space for people to process and acknowledge their emotions throughout the day or to be centered. When people are providing hard news or I have parents that are upset, I tend to slow down and just let the story unfold before we take steps or start thinking about what needs to happen next. I get to coach our leaders to incorporate spaces for youth to be able to emotionally regulate at our clubs. And the fun part is I like sneaking things in that people don't expect coming. So I'll write in budget line items when applying for grants to bring in more mental health training or to do pay increases and really take a look at pay equity for staff. Um, but there are the other parts too where I let my staff know that, yeah, I'm a social worker first in this role. And so I'll send mental health resources out to our staff in the employee newsletter. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, I'm always loving the fact that I get to drive those practices around doing no harm or being a strength-based organization in all of the decisions that I'm making at an executive level. And I love having that type of influence and responsibility because I get to define what it means to be an executive leader and a social worker at the same time. So happy to answer questions later. Thank you so much, and I'll pass it back.
That was lovely. Thank you so much. Up next, we have Robert.
Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Sagastumi, and pronounced he, they. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, originally from Honduras, Central America. And truly, my journey in social work began out of survival. I was one of the few undocumented students in Kansas City that did not know that after graduating from high school, my dreams of going to college were going to be crashed. And out of that need, I became doing advocacy and grassroots organizing and all of this amazing things that led me to like meet wonderful people like one of my biggest mentors and colleague and friend, Melinda Lewis, and just other community members that like truly gave me the skills that I needed to like learn about advocacy. So the intersection of like immigration and education has been at the forefront of everything that I do. So I'm currently in the philanthropy space through a nonprofit organization called the Hispanic Development Fund. So we do college access here. And how I started in this role was through direct service. I wanted to make sure that through my live experiences and through the live experiences of those students who could potentially be in the same space that I was as an undocumented immigrant, I could like radically like listen to what their needs were and their families and try to like come up with pathways and systems that would allow them to thrive. So that's pretty much what I get to do in my new role as a community impact officer is like find organizations out in the community and just individuals and build a relationship with those individuals that may have an opportunity to align with our values and what we're doing here to create those pathways for students that are often pushed aside and are not given an opportunity. Among those responsibilities, that's like a high level, but among those responsibilities, like also helping individuals to create strategic plans, think about like ways to like truly engage our community and like stakeholders who may not necessarily be aware of some of the challenges that our undocumented or mixed status families come across. So I come from a mixed status family where everybody in my family had some sort of a status, legal protection, and I did not. So that's how like I have been able to like come into this space and truly like social work saved my life. Like it was through learning through individuals that I was able to like get in a space where I gained the skills that I have gained. So like, being able to like again radically listen to our stakeholders, our community members, and be able to like hold space for them and find a way to like work with them and not for them. That is essential in the work that I engage. Um, I also like to, tell people I'm not here to like empower anyone. Everybody's empowered. We just have to create space and opportunities to activate our communities. And that's, what I get to do through philanthropy. That's what I get to do through my work. So it's been like life-changing to find ways to invest in our community and help others see like the investment that we can have in our communities if we can just listen, if we can just like open up our hearts and create pathways for individuals to like really thrive. I think the most rewarding aspect of my work is truly being able to come back to the community where I grew up and to like be in spaces where students normally don't see themselves and talk to them about like the possibilities and to like visibility say that also, hey, I'm queer, I was undocumented at some point, and there are still opportunities for you to thrive. So I think that's most rewarding of the work that I get to do now. So thank you all. I'm looking forward to anybody joining my section or the opportunity to like ask any question or answer any questions. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. Up next, we have Haley.
Hi, everyone. I'm probably the youngest and newest social worker on the panel. I am 24 and I just graduated with my MSW in 2023. Woohoo! Yes, so very exciting stuff. But yes, my name is Haley Miller and I'm the project coordinator for the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority Statewide Violence Prevention Plan. It's kind of a mouthful. My position is funded by a state government agency, and I am based out of the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. So yeah, my supervisor, Dr. Rachel Garth, leads the Violence Prevention Research Lab at the university. That being said, Dr. Garth has many projects besides the Violence Prevention Plan, including partnerships with the Illinois Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the U.S. Department of Justice's Office on Violence Against Women. So in my position, I tend to wear many hats besides the violence prevention plan, although that specific project is my main focus. I have been in my position for a little over a year since I just got my MSW last year. But in that time, I've grown immensely in my macro career. So for the violence prevention plan, I had the opportunity to run a series of focus groups with violence prevention grantees who have been funded by an ICEJA grant. The goal of these focus groups was to receive grantees' perceptions of grant writing, implementation, and reporting processes to help us address and understand supports and barriers for violence prevention grantees. So after those focus groups, I was able to hold individual interviews with grant specialists to get their view as well on supports and barriers for violence prevention grantees. And this all culminated into a report that I was a co-author on. And we also used it to help develop the 2025 to 2029 Illinois Violence Prevention Plan by including that information in our work group meetings. Along with that project, I was able to be a note taker for a handful of our focus groups with survivors of domestic violence. Currently, I am a TA for Dr. Garth's Social Work 380 course titled The Science of Youth Violence Prevention, and this is the first semester we are rolling that course out. And I'm on the panel reviewing students' final projects, which I am very excited about because I am a recent student. So yeah. So you're probably wondering how I got here. Well, I always knew I wanted to do social work ever since I was in high school because my mom is a social worker. But when I started the BSW program at U of I in 2020, I definitely thought I wanted to do clinical practice. That was what I was going for, was to be either a therapist or something of that nature. That was until I completed my BSW internship at Women in Need Recovery. WIN Recovery is a transitional home for women and LGBTQ plus folk who are suffering from a substance use disorder and need assistance integrating back into society post-incarceration. Through my internship, I realized that there were systemic challenges that were severely affecting the populations that I was so passionate about. Realizing this took a toll on my mental health and made me think that social work might not be the profession for me. So when I was applying for my MSW, one of the specializations was leadership and social change, which immediately sparked my interest because I had never heard of it before. And this led me down to the path of finding macro social work and also regaining my passion for the profession, which I had lost through my direct client practice internship. I completed my master's internship at the Center for Prevention Research and Development, which is an extension of UIUC School of Social Work. And I was able to work on the Office of Firearm Violence Prevention Grant, which was an amazing experience for me and truly opened my eyes to the world of macro social work and what it entails. So yeah. So through that was how I met my supervisor, Dr. Garth, because she was one of the trainers that worked on the grant with us. And she saw potential in me and offered me a full-time position as the project coordinator for the Illinois statewide violence prevention plan. So all that being said, to be successful in macro social work, I had to quickly get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I also had to be open to learning and trying new things. I never thought I would run focus groups or be a co-author. Like I said, whenever I first started as a BSW, I thought I was going to be a therapist. So it's very amazing what can happen whenever you are open to new opportunities. But up until the last decade, we were not able to receive government funding for programs that were directly addressing things such as firearm violence, street outreach or intervention, or community violence. Therefore, the most rewarding aspect of being a project coordinator for the Illinois Violence Prevention Plan is being a part of the nationwide movement that will work to prevent violence in any and all forms for years to come. So yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I love to see all the students here. So thank you.
That was wonderful. So up next, we have Jessica.
All right, let me get it off mute and here we go. Well, first, I just want to thank you for having me here. I am feeling so grateful at this moment with all this passion, all this energy, all of this wisdom. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, and I'm also just struck by the students and professionals from one coast to the next, and then down to the third coast in Texas. I mean, folks are from everywhere. How exciting is this? It really, thank you for having me. I'm Jessica Shaheen, and Unlike a previous speaker, I am retired and I'm staying retired, and I know how to do it very, very well. That said, I have a passion for the work that I did, and I do stay attached to it through my school, the University of Texas at Austin. I do mentor work. I do a lot of things. So I don't really let go of what is important to all of us, which are those connections. So many people have talked about it. I was the associate administrator for SNAP, and I thought I might have to explain what SNAP is, but I'm getting kind of the feeling that most of the people on this call probably know that the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, what used to be called food stamps, what might be called all sorts of different things across the country, actually, to tell you the truth, but it's the largest nutrition program in the country. It is designed and it works in accordance with the economy of the country or the local economy. So it's not just about the nation, it goes all the way down to the local in terms of how it can respond. And it does exactly that. It's how it works. I have known it to have as few as 17 million people receiving it, up to 47 million people receiving it. When I left, our budget in SNAP was about $80 billion. So it was a large program that had about 100 people who administrated it, who did the administration of it at the federal level. Now, you can't do that by yourself with 100 people, $80 billion, not million, billion. Can you? No. So this is a program that has partners at every level. We have our state partners, we have our local partners, we have the community organizations, we have the advocate organizations. We've got you think tanks. Florida, thank you very much for everything you do to help inform the policy decisions that are being made. These are all so important, and those were all of our partners. Our direct work, what we did, once again, we couldn't do it alone because we had to get input from all of those different partners to understand what we were doing and what kind of impact it was going to be. Are we not thinking about unintended consequences, perhaps? Those kinds of things. But what we did, we promulgated the rules based on the laws that were passed. We worked on policies, and somebody was talking about government work. I got to tell you, I'm kind of interrupting my flow here, but I just want you guys to know that public service is so important, and it is not easy. That is true, but it's incredibly rewarding. One of the big challenges is every 4 to 8 years, you have a new boss, and that new boss has new priorities, and they think they know. And so you have to give advice and counsel and data and information and share as best you can so that you will have policy that can be implemented that improves the program. That is what you are always looking to do, is to improve the program and how it responds to the people who need it. That is public service, and it is incredibly rewarding. Is it frustrating? Yes, it is a little bit. I'm going to be honest. It has its frustrations. But you just cannot imagine, folks, you really can't imagine how much we need social workers in public service. There are not enough of us. We are needed. Boy, I'm not following I have a little outline here and I'm just really off track, but let me just talk a little bit about that. You do, depending on, and you're going to come in at different levels. You may work just on the policy side, or you might work just on the research side, analysis and evaluation. You might even work in the budget shop. Gotta tell you, that's an important skill. If you can have it wherever you are. But hopefully you'll be like me and you will make your way into a leadership role. The role that I had was the senior career executive of SNAP for the whole country. I never would have expected that. My goodness, no, no, no. Now, when I was a hospital social worker and having the same experience, kind of that I think it was Haley was talking about, that, oh my gosh, I'm helping this individual person, but there's a bunch of policy stuff out there that's really getting in my way of doing the right thing here. That's when you start thinking about, is there a macro approach? And by the way, Haley, you may be the youngest, but I believe I'm the oldest. I retired on my birthday at 70, and that's well over 2 years ago. So we have little bookends going here. Skills that are needed. People have talked about, there are the classics. You know, you need the skill that we all have, and that is we see how things connect, don't we? We see how things interact. There's that term, connect the dots. I used to hate that. Well, you got to connect the dots. Well, you know what? It's right, though. It is a very good description of what we do and what we see and how we think. That is how we just naturally think as social workers. Where are the connections? Where are the dots? Where are the ones where the connections aren't happening, but they need to, right? Problem solving skills. Oh my gosh. You got a lot of problems, so you got to have a lot of problem solving skills. Big one in this area. Communication skills. Oral, written, and listening. And of the three, the greatest is listening. It is the one that doesn't get as much attention. It is the one that is most critical. Somebody's already mentioned, used a term I'd never heard, radical listening. What a great way to kind of focus in on the attention of it and bringing it. But for me, it's pragmatic listening. It's an openness. It is that openness that someone else mentioned. You're hearing the same thing from a lot of us, aren't you? But then there are those, at first I had put it down that these were emerging skills in social work, but I don't know that there's so much emerging because they've been around for a while, but they are important. And I haven't been in school in a long time, so it may have been a while. Maybe you are talking about this stuff more, but the skills around data analysis, the Florida think tank, you mentioned, the whole notion of data. It is so important that you be able to represent in a knowledgeable way the data and the analysis so that you can persuade. Because not everybody knows, not everybody agrees. If you need to get somebody to see something from a policy perspective that you are trying to sell, you want this budget proposal to go through Congress. You want this farm bill proposal to go through Congress. You want whatever it is you're looking at. You want that. You have to persuade, and the best persuasion comes from good data, good analysis. So those are some really important skills. Somebody's mentioned budget. I gotta tell you, budget and the business savvy, it's really helpful. You don't have to be able to be the one that knows how to do the budget exactly, but you sure need to understand it. You need to be able to talk it. You need to have the knowledge. Strategic planning, technology, project management even. These are just some things that if you can have some basic knowledge about them, it will just enrich your opportunities. So then we also, am I going too long? Am I doing okay? I'm doing okay. Okay. I have two more things to talk about then. Most rewarding. Well, the most rewarding thing for me, I spent 18 years at the Food and Nutrition Service. That's at USDA. Most people don't know. They think that food stamps or SNAP is in Health and Human Services. It's not. It's in ag. But I spent 18 years in an agency that was just filled with smart, dedicated, committed, mission-driven people. Oh my gosh, can you imagine how wonderful that is every day to walk in and work with people like that? And to also work for a program like SNAP that makes a difference in people's lives every day, every single day. Will you miss clinical work and that one-on-one with people? Oh man, yeah, you will. If you go into macro, you are going to every once in a while miss that direct contact. But to think that you are doing things that can influence and make a difference nationwide, big time. We're talking millions of people. It is incredibly rewarding, and you don't get that heart every day, but you get the heart every morning when you walk in, and you get to make a difference every single day. So I'd say that, the program itself and the fact that the success of the program is so dependent on the multiple partners. I really love the building coalitions. I really love working with all the different folks. So that whole relationship basis that you find in public service, because in public service, you will learn very quickly, you can't do anything by yourself. You can't do anything by yourself. And so those are probably the most rewarding aspects of the job that they work for me. And then, you know what? I think I'll end there. If anybody has any questions, I am really looking forward to having discussions with folk in the breakout. If that works for you guys, I would love that. I'd love that opportunity.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, we have Representative Gilchrist.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Jillian Gilchrist, and I am a state representative in Connecticut at the Connecticut General Assembly. I've served 3 terms. They're 2-year terms, and was just elected to my 4th term, which will start in January. So some of the roles and responsibilities are first and foremost to my constituents, so the folks who elected me. And what that looks like is they can email or call my office with a concern really on any number of topics. And then it's my responsibility to try and connect them to state agencies or to services that would support them. And so that's called constituent services. During the pandemic, that in the district I serve, prior to the pandemic, I used to say it was about 85% policy work, 15% constituent work. During the pandemic, that flipped entirely. And so on a daily basis, I was speaking with and connecting with constituents who needed government support, who had never needed support before. And so really walking them through what that process looks like. Additionally, as a state representative, I'm meeting with folks on a daily basis, individually, in small groups, in large groups, to discuss various issues and to try to determine what we can do about it policy-wise. And so that can look like many different things. And I find it fascinating as a social worker because I'm getting to learn from the experiences of those in the field to inform what the policy should look like. I also have to work with my legislative colleagues. So once you get elected, you're also now have this whole group of folks that you need to work with to try and get a policy across the finish line. And so getting to meet people from across the state of Connecticut and across party lines, to have conversations about important issues, to learn from them, to share what I know, to try and maybe persuade them or educate them on an issue maybe they've never thought about before. I also now, again, in my 3rd term, last year, the last 2 years, chaired the Human Services Committee. And so it's interesting getting to hear the individual right before me. So my primary responsibility as chair of the Human Services Committee is that I'm responsible for our state's Medicaid program, but I also oversee our TANF program in the state too. And so it's really this full circle moment of getting to be a social worker who gets to work on social welfare policy for our state. And then I've used this role and this opportunity to bring light to topics that haven't gotten the attention that they need. So I formed and chair what's called the endometriosis working group, 1 in 10 individuals who identify as a woman, 1 in 10 individuals who can give birth can experience endometriosis. And so we formed the working group to bring light to this topic, and we meet monthly, and we've passed the first of its kind biorepository in the state of Connecticut to do research about endometriosis. So it also is this opportunity as a state representative to know that you can elevate topics that maybe haven't gotten the attention that they deserve. So a day in the life can look anything like I'll do today. I chaired a meeting on gender responsiveness in the judicial system. Then I met with a partner to talk about the state budget. And I just got back from talking to Girl Scouts in the 3rd grade about the importance of being in government. So really, it can be all over the place. But some of the skills, and I heard this, I will echo, the number 1 skill is listening. I can only do my job because I listen and learn from those who are working in the field and are able to inform me and educate me about what the problem is or what's working right and what needs and what they want to see happen. And then I'm skilled at taking what they're saying and figuring out, okay, how do we get that through the legislative process into a policy that will actually impact positive change? Also skills of facilitating conversations. So again, chairing a meeting of, even if it's 3 people, a meeting of 15 people, I chair a meeting that's 75 people. And so how do you keep a meeting going? How do you make sure folks get to share their opinions in a positive, peaceful manner? How do you manage conflict that arises in those meetings? And so have to have those skills. And then research skills. I was always passionate about research, continue to be passionate, but I always, when I'm having a conversation about policy, my first question is always, has this been done before? Like, why recreate the wheel? So trying to figure out if other states have worked on this same issue, what's being done, what worked, what didn't work. I take a team of interns, which I love, that are social work students. I always work with social work students. And so I have them doing research for me quite frequently to figure out what is the best practice, what is being said about this topic, how can that inform our work? And so then I'd get to the final piece of what do I find most rewarding? And what I find most rewarding is there will be people, there's always people for whom they've experienced something really challenging, hard in their life, and their reaction to that experience is wanting to create policy change so other people don't have to experience the same thing. And getting to be part of that process for someone, getting to work with them and turn their idea into a law that will impact others. It's not part of everyone's healing journey, but when it is something that's going to help someone heal, it means the world to me that I get to be a part of that. And to me, that's truly what social work's all about, and why it is so important that micro works with macro, because we can only do what we do as a policymaker because of the experiences of people and getting to learn and listen to them to impact change. So thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, and thank you so much. I just want to take a second to just applaud all of our panelists. You all were amazing. Now we are going to get a little bit more intimate, and I'm going to open the breakout rooms. Remember, we're going to have 2 15-minute sessions so that you can ask questions of the panelists of your choice. So those breakout rooms will be opening now.